Hi there.
Hello.
I just have to tell you something. I just listened to your podcast with Jordan.
Yeah.
Totally blew me out of the water.
Oh,
I didn't know so much about you
yeah.
that I learned from that, and also Jordan too. I
Yeah.
didn't know things about him.
Hmm.
And let me tell you, the answers that you gave to the questions he asked are so similar despite our huge differences. First of all, in age. I was cracking up when you were saying, when George said, well, what do you see yourself at, at 56 or 66? And I went, oh shit, I'm still at 76. So yeah, so despite the age difference, the
Yeah.
cultural difference, and the more different we are, the more similar we are.
Exactly.
And that's what was such a beautiful thing. I just finished it 2 seconds ago. Actually, quick, I got to get on because Linda, we're going to do
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
It was wonderful.
Thank you so much for watching it, because I really appreciate him turning the tables, because then people can get to know me,
Yes.
my story of like why I'm doing these podcasts and my history and past, and then it becomes more relatable and we connect more.
Yeah. And there were connections that I was making with your life growing up with your father, because I had a similar father in
Mhm.
that respect. And Jordan's loss of his father, Halloween, and how that affected him.
Mhm.
And yet when my father passed, it was sad. Yes, I wasn't going to have a father. The phone didn't ring on Sunday mornings anymore.
Mm.
And as a result, but I was free. There was a freedom.
Mm.
A
Mhm.
weight was lifted off me for all the expectations he held from me,
Mm. Mhm.
which I never met. I mean, I had just a stupid story. In 8th grade, I got a 99 in math,
Oh my
and I
God.
brought my report card home and he said, oh, it's a 99. Why wasn't it 100? So that kind of was very formative in the way I looked at myself
Yeah.
growing up.
Yeah.
So when he passed away and I was an adult, it was freeing. And so
Mhm.
I'm listening to your responses.
Yeah.
Just amazing.
Oh, thank you so
Amazing.
much. I love it. I love it that you watched it just before this and be able to connect with it. And
Yes.
it's such a huge weight to have those like heavy expectations and never being able to meet them and feeling like you're never enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay,
Perfect.
good. Good.
Yes, well, welcome to the Art and Hustle podcast, Gallery of Conversations. I am super excited to have here a beautiful CI teacher, Jim Parise, and many, many students loved you and had you. And I'm super excited to have you here today to speak about your life and your book and your history and your stories and how we're all connected. And I'm so happy that you are joining me and just saw my podcast with Jordan, and welcome.
I am honored that you asked, first of all. And I'm nervous. I don't know why I'm nervous about it.
Well,
Because
I'm
you're
always,
so
yeah.
down to earth. But I'm nervous about it.
No, I'm always nervous. Like, it's funny, even when I start these and even as I do these, I'm nervous anytime I come on these, because this
Okay.
is not something that I thought I would do. This is not something I'm comfortable doing. And so I jumped in like super nervous with high anxiety because I'm not used to being on camera. I'm not used to being an interviewer. So I kind of just jumped in because I started doing my Artandhustle gallery shows, but then COVID hit and my partner was like, you should really do a podcast and like talk to everybody that, you did art shows, but then expanded to people that I know in general from like school and, people I've worked with, people I've gone to school with, that I feel like everyone has a story, and I feel like every story will help and every story will heal.
Yes.
And so I would
You
love
know,
to jump in.
you just used the words that I have been using of late more often than not. As I age, connection is the most important thing in my life.
Mhm.
To connect with people and hear their stories,
Yes.
and also not be afraid to share my own.
Yep.
And that's a big thing for me.
Huge.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Huge. And that's where I'm coming into my life now, where I'm unpacking a lot of my past trauma and being comfortable to talk about it. And like I told you last night when we spoke quickly, that as I do these podcasts, I've spoken to a few amount of people where I keep telling people, like, I really want to write my book because I really want to get that story out. And it's been like in the back of my head for a really long time to tell that story and also be able to help somebody. Like maybe my story, somebody will hear it and realize, oh, I thought Linda was like fully, had a perfect life, parents were great, had a restaurant, and she looked like she was all put together and no problems. When in reality, I was living a nightmare at home and still unpacking that now as an adult. So I want people to see like, oh, well, if she went through that and was able to succeed and have a good career, maybe I can do it too.
Yeah, I love your word unpacking. I wish I had heard that prior to even writing the book, but unpacking is the exact word that describes what I've been through, and obviously listening to you, what you've gone through. And it's the unpacking and decide I'm going to keep, what I'm going to throw away, and how I'm going to move forward with what I'm keeping.
Yeah, because it's a huge weight on us. And honestly, a lot of that weight, I realized I got sick from it. Like I physically got sick. Like I got a breast abscess around the time that my mom was dying, and also I was getting a divorce. And so I was holding so much in that I literally got sick. My body just immune system gave way and I had a breast abscess and had to have surgery. So tell us a little about your book and how you finally was able to jump into that and unpacking.
Okay. I was first diagnosed in 2006. And I had been retired for 6 years, which is a good thing because I don't know how, for example, remember Epicromitis, Kozlowski, whatever, she was going through all her treatments and still was working. I don't know that I could have done that, an enormous amount of strength it takes. But I was diagnosed in 2006, and it was, the name of the book is I Was Healthy Until I Wasn't.
Yeah.
And that's so true because one day I was fine, the next day I had cancer. How does that happen? And I was stage 4.
Wow. So it was there for a while.
It was there for a while, and it only manifested itself between Thanksgiving and Christmas when I got a bellyache. And it was like you overeat at Thanksgiving, then you start going to Christmas parties, you overeat, you overdrink, and you get a stomachache. And that's what I thought it was, but it didn't go away.
Wow.
And it progressively got worse to the point where one morning at about 2 o'clock, I drove myself to the hospital because I couldn't stand the pain.
Wow.
And they did some preliminary tests, and the doctor came in, this is part of the introduction in the book, and said to me, well, Mr. Parise, you either have indigestion. It was either indigestion, leukemia, or cancer. And I went, whoa,
You're
whoa,
like,
whoa.
what? That's
Stop.
crazy. Yeah, that's crazy.
And they had given me morphine to ease the pain. So I wasn't hearing and processing their words. And then he wanted to cut me open that same day. And they'd already scheduled an oncological consult, and the surgery, the surgery was scheduled at 1 o'clock that afternoon.
Yeah.
And I said, no one's cutting me open right now. I need to think about this, get a second opinion. And that's how the cancer came about. I did get a second opinion, a third opinion, and then went into treatment. But I relapsed 3 times.
Wow.
The cancer kept progressing and getting worse. And I thought, well, if you've always done what you always, if you always do what you've always done, you're always going to get what you always got. So you got to change it up. And that's when I decided to go to Sloan Kettering in the city. And explored the option of having a stem cell transplant, which I did in 2009.
Yeah.
And that was, you used the word journey, that was a journey in and of itself.
Yeah.
And the question I think that you might be underlying your words is that I held everything inside.
Yes.
And when you're saying you were, everything was held inside of you and you got sick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can identify with that 100%, because I was more worried about how it was going to affect the people in my life.
Yes, that's always me too. Like I'm always worried about everybody else, and then I'll just worry about myself later when the kids go to sleep, or when I have time, or when it's the weekend, I'll think about myself.
Yeah, and I didn't, and because it was between Thanksgiving and Christmas, I didn't want to spoil anybody's holiday by breaking this
Yes,
kind of news.
that's
So
what happened when I
everything,
got sick and I just ignored it and we went on vacation.
yeah, exactly. I can identify with that 100% because it was not something you wanted to reveal at that time. You know, and
Mhm,
everybody says, you
mhm,
know, time is of the essence, and I wasn't going to ruin a
mhm.
holiday,
Yeah.
but I kept it inside, and that's how I learned to continue to keep it inside.
Mm.
Years and years and years.
Mhm.
And I'm seeing a therapist now. I'll be
Yeah.
honest about it. I don't care what
No,
people
yeah,
think
yeah.
about it.
I need to find a new one because my old one doesn't take my insurance now.
Yeah, well, mine doesn't take insurance either. And so, and now that I'm on Medicare, no one wants to mess with Medicare.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's horrible. But
Yeah.
anyway, I've been seeing him for 3 years. And partly I went to him because I needed to learn how to process what I had buried for so long.
Yeah.
And one of the first things he said to me, I guess after a month of seeing him, he said, Jim, I want you to draw a picture of your cancer. So,
Mhm.
you know, I won't ever show anybody, especially an artist like yourself, what that picture looked like.
No, yeah.
But when I brought it into him, his eyes popped out of his head.
Wow.
And he must have thought to himself, oh, damn, you know, these guys are going to be in therapy. I could buy that new boat I want, you know, because of,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
the time I was going to need. And then I was talking about the blog that I kept while I was in Sloan Kettering.
Mhm.
I was in isolation for 70 some odd days.
Wow.
I couldn't leave a 20 by 20 room except
Wow.
to get a PET scan or a CAT scan or whatever to see how I was progressing.
Mhm.
And so I was stuck. And part of the reason I kept the blog was it kept me busy. There was nothing
Mhm.
else to do. I couldn't leave the room. I had a
Mhm.
small TV. I couldn't get a lot of channels. Couldn't use my computer to talk to my kids and my grandkids
No?
because it was against hospital policy. They
Really?
didn't want anything revealed on camera that was
Oh,
going on in the room. So I was forbidden to have that kind of connection. Um,
wow.
and so I kept it for that. I kept it as a chronologue so I could go back and see on this date I did this, this happened, and so
Mm.
on. And then
Mhm.
the last part of it, the reason why I kept the blog was to help relieve the burden. And here it is thinking of everybody else.
Mhm.
Everybody was asking, like Nancy Rocker, you know, I was, you know, with her at the time. They would call her, and the first thing they would say is, "How's Jim?" They would
Mm.
never ask how she was doing,
Mm.
which we'll talk about
Yeah,
perhaps
that's
later.
a whole nother thing too.
Yeah, the caretakers. We can't get
Yeah.
into that right now,
We'll have
but
to get her on the podcast too.
oh, absolutely. And it was like, let me keep it so that now I can answer these questions by keeping this blog. People can read the blog, and it will save my sisters, my kids, and Nancy the trouble of having to answer the same question multiple times.
Mm, mhm.
So from that blog, which I kept, that was my way of dealing with things immediately.
Yeah.
So the therapist said to me when I talked to him about it, he said, and I saved it. I don't know why I saved it, Linda. And then I guess now I know why.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
an unforeseen thing in the cosmos that said, save me.
Yes.
So I
Yeah.
put him in a box. I moved him down here with me to Florida.
Mhm.
And he said, dig them out, dig out the blog entries, revisit them. He said, and then maybe you'll have enough material for a book. And he
Yeah.
said, if you write the book, it doesn't have to be seen by anybody. You
Yes.
don't
That's
have to
beautiful.
share with
That's a
anybody.
beautiful advice.
You just, like the unpacking
Yeah.
piece of it.
Yeah.
So I started working on it seriously about a year and a half ago.
Mhm.
And like I said on the Facebook post, I just got my copy of the book last Tuesday. And it was like holding a child, a newborn
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
my arms.
Congratulations.
And it's
Congratulations.
like, you know, so it has been a purgation of all this stuff that I've been burying inside.
Yes.
And even I've reread it 3 times in book form. So I have it
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
I,
Let's show the camera. Let's show the
I
audience.
have it here, right here. And
Yes.
I've read it 3 times. And each time I read it, I
Mhm.
cry.
Wow.
Because and my friend Judy, who just called me now, and I told her I'd talk to her later. She's a social clinical psychiatrist, like a psychologist. She's got degrees in speech therapy and so on. I
Mhm.
met with her last week. She channels also, which is really amazing. Which is
Ooh,
what
I
I
love that.
love. I
Really?
love that about her. And she was doing this writing while she was channeling things
Wow, I
for me.
love it.
And it was almost illegible. And she was speaking almost in tongues. It was a little scary.
Yeah.
But she said to me, that's the tears are getting rid of the poison that you have held inside
Mm,
of you for 16 years.
yes, yes.
And so I kept saying to myself when I was crying, reading my own book, and I know how it ended because I wrote the damn thing,
Yeah.
but it was my way of releasing
Yes.
and getting rid of this that was toxic.
Yes.
And
And
that's,
that's like emotional cancer there too,
oh, and you
right?
know, you and I both know that
Yeah.
stress,
Yes.
and if we hold that stress inside,
Yes.
it
It
it's
turns it manifests because we are mind, body, and soul and spirit beings. And so those emotions turn into it and manifest itself like they're
yeah,
holding it in, that cancerous like emotions.
yes, yeah. So the book came about. I didn't want to write a book that was medical because I can't. I don't know. I don't have that knowledge, and
Yeah.
I didn't want to write a book that was, just talking about me. And so the subtitle of the book is "The Faces of Cancer," and
Mm-hmm.
it is about me and about the journey that I was on, but it's predominantly about the people I met
Mm,
and whose lives and their own particular journeys intertwined with my own,
mm,
and how as different as we are, I mean, two of the people I met are conservatives,
mm,
Republicans from the word go. And I don't know what your political beliefs are, but I was at the time more liberal. I'm a little bit more moderate now.
mm,
But we would never, these other gentlemen who were in the same situation, who had had stem cell transplants at the
mm,
same time I did, I would never have talked to them. Or if we had been at the same gathering, which would have been unlikely anyway,
mm,
I would have probably been polite, said hello, and then moved on to somebody else.
yeah.
However,
Mm-hmm.
despite the huge differences
Yeah.
in our beliefs, in our morality, in our priorities, we had a commonality that bonded us together. And I
Mm-hmm.
think cancer patients, regardless of gender, regardless of the kind of cancer, regardless of the treatment differences,
Mm-hmm.
we're bound together with the disease.
Yeah.
And that's why I wanted to write the book, to kind
Mm,
of let people know, one, if you've had cancer, you're not alone.
yeah.
If you've survived it, you're a miracle in this world,
Mm-hmm.
and you need to celebrate yourself.
Yeah.
And that's where it came from.
No, and I love it. And as soon as I saw your post on Facebook and you holding up that book, I just felt the energy of it. And I knew how much of a huge feat that is, an accomplishment that is for yourself, and to get it out there and to be vulnerable to, put it all there and talk about it and put it out there. I was like, let me send you a text. We have to get you on. And it was a week later because like I'm going through my own like struggles in life as well. So I was doing the podcast for a while and then took the summer off and had like, a meltdown.
I've been there, done that, I know.
Yeah, I just had like a whole like, psychological meltdown. But then now, the school kids are starting school again. So I'm like, I have to get myself back together.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed that when you said that to Jordan as well,
Yeah.
and what's wonderful about you that I admire so greatly is that you pick yourself up by the bootstraps and you move. And you said this several times to Jordan. When one thing fell apart, you moved on to the next. But you're a talented enough person, and you are spiritual enough
Hmm.
to not let yourself stay in that meltdown position.
Yeah.
And now I got to go. I got to go, because you're not the kind of person who's going to sit there and let it happen to you. You're
Yeah.
going to make it happen.
Yeah.
And I admire you for that.
Yeah. And it's a really hard thing because I realized like I've always had this mentality where, okay, I'm just gonna keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing. But I had this like desire to prove myself before, to prove to either society, to my family, and to myself that I was enough. And so when I was in corporate world, it helped me push myself because I had this level I wanted to do. But then I got let go of my job in March of 2020. Now,
Right.
like analyze everything, and now all I have is time to unpack things and go into my childhood. But then I realized I don't care about that anymore. I don't need that anymore. So now I'm at a weird place where if I don't need that, what else am I doing in this space? And how am I going to make money when I don't want to go back to that corporate world?
Right.
You know,
Right.
so it's like and then I fell into depression. And it was like the worst depression I've ever felt because that desire to push myself went away. So I was sitting in that space of like where I didn't have that need and I didn't have that desire. And I was like, oh my God, this is terrible. Now I understand what mental health, where people go into dark
Oh,
depression.
absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
it was like a new understanding for me, but I'm slowly coming out of that now. And I'm like, okay, I have to push myself. I got to go back into podcasting because I love that community that I started to create. And I love the stories I hear from people. So I was like, I got to push myself. I'm just going to start making appointments with everybody and connecting with people to not feel alone, because most people always feel alone in their struggles.
Yes. I think, if I may be so bold as to pass judgment on you, I'm glad you're out of the corporate world.
Yeah.
I think you are doing more good with these podcasts and connecting people, you connecting with them, people connecting with each other.
Mhm.
And your art is still always there. And that is something that you are so skilled and talented with that may not have shined as it should have when you were in corporate.
Yeah.
And now Linda's beauty is surfacing, that unpacking, it's all coming out.
Mhm.
And that's what I was talking about. I wrote a poem a couple of years ago.
Ooh.
It was called I Am Not Invisible, because I
Mhm.
started to feel that way. I
Yeah.
started to feel like I was shrinking and disappearing and evaporating into nothing.
Wow.
And it was a depressive feeling.
Depressing. It's
Absolutely.
depressing, like the darkness that overtakes you.
Yeah. And I think that you with the podcast, me with the book, and the connections that have come from this newly written thing, now not only creates a new piece of me and who I am, but
Mhm.
it's also a more peaceful part of
Yes.
me.
Yes.
And it's like, the movie Waiting to Exhale. I
Mhm.
can exhale now because so much of this stuff is now out there. And
Yes.
what I'm finding is that I know you and Jordan talked about, I thought it was so interesting, about old friends versus new friends.
Mhm. Mhm.
And moving down to Florida permanently 6 years ago, I didn't know too many people here, even though I was commuting back and forth, seasonally. So I developed a cult of friends, so to speak.
Mhm.
And now I have a lot of new friends
Mhm.
because of my experiences. And it's funny, I wanted to interrupt your podcast with Jordan, but I knew I couldn't, and say, I feel like I'm cheating on my old friends sometimes when I'm with my new friends.
Yeah.
And there's an important balance that you have to
Yes.
strike between the two.
Yes.
So that affected me, that statement that you two were talking about.
Yeah, because that's one of the things I realized that wasn't good at doing, is balancing old friends with new friends in high
Mhm,
school.
mhm.
Because because like me, like my sister and brother were the smart academics, so I didn't have that. But I was in scouts class, so I had one honors class, and then I had like middle regents, and then I had like a couple C's and B's and A's. So like I was always all over the gamut. So I had like different friends in each groups that
Yeah,
had to figure out how to juggle, which I didn't do well in juggling that. But as I got older, I realized like, oh, okay, so I need to like make sure I, carve out time for these friends, these friends, these friends. And it's a balancing act.
yes, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. I went through that in high school because when I moved to Smithtown from Levittown, I was what they called a hood. I had the bright orange socks and the skinny orange tie and the silver metal belt and all that. So when I moved to Smithtown, I fell into the out group because that's what I look like, the Cuban heels and the pointy shoes and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then because academically, I was probably smarter than some of those students then, which is a terribly egotistical thing to say, I suppose. But then I kind of floated to the middle group. There were three cliques kind of thing, and I floated into the middle group. And then because I was in honors classes in high school, then I got to be part of the in group.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
I didn't never lost my friends from the out group, the hoods, that
Mhm.
used to hang out with, because that was part of who I was. So
Mhm.
I started to learn a balancing act, but then I had to make a choice, and
Mm.
I stayed more with the smarter kids, the academically inclined kids, the college bound kids,
Mhm.
um, and that's how I started to learn how to balance. But I had to relearn it now
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
with moving and
Moving
making
to
new
yeah.
friends, and so
Mhm.
on, and not forgetting the old.
Yeah, yeah. Now let's rewind it back to
Sure.
like childhood and how where you grew up, your nationality, your parents. Let's rewind it all the way back there because that's how it also shapes us, right?
Yes. Yeah. I'm Italian on both sides, 100%, and I'll give you a little sidebar when I finish this first part. And I was raised in a typically Italian household. The father was the boss, the mother was the housemaker. It was like Leave It to Beaver on drugs.
Mhm. Yeah,
Ward went out, he did his job, he came back, and Judy
yeah.
was there in her starched little apron and high heels, and she's cooking, dinner. And that's what my house was like when I
Mhm.
grew up. My father always had the last word,
Mhm.
and you didn't argue.
Yep.
And if I got called James Anthony, I knew I was in big trouble. I had to come
Mhm.
downstairs, pronto.
Mhm.
I was born in 1946, so that mentality in the 50s, I guess, is more. I kind of identify with the 50s, early 60s in my growing up.
Mhm.
And I was born in Brooklyn. My
Brooklyn.
parents moved to Levittown,
Mhm.
one of those little post-war houses that cost $4,700.
Wow.
Yeah, and
Wow.
yeah,
4,700.
100, yeah, you can't even buy
No.
coffee for that
No,
anymore,
no,
right?
no.
And that's where I was raised. And then my parents decided to move to Smithtown,
Okay.
and that's where I went to high school. And that was a big change because losing a friend,
Friends.
friends from elementary school, and then junior high school, and then it was a whole new.
So high school was in Smithtown?
Yeah, it was then called Smithtown Central
Okay.
before Smithtown broke up into East and West. And I think it's back to Central now. I'm not quite sure.
Okay.
And that's what I did.
Mm.
And then it was expected of me, despite the fact that I did not want to go to college. I
Mhm.
was an absolutely obnoxious teenager. I don't know how my parents didn't toss me out to the curb
Mhm.
because I was horrible my senior year. I was disobedient. I was rebellious. I did a lot of things that I don't regret because they're part of what makes me who I am today.
They make for
Um,
good stories, no?
yeah, it sure does. Yeah, cocktail party conversations.
Yeah, yeah.
And my parents didn't trust me to go to college on my own. They flew me up to college, literally,
Mm.
almost in handcuffs, and
Wow.
made me go.
Yeah.
For which I thank them. But it was not a fun time in my life.
Wow.
And then I realized I had all this freedom at college. There was no one there telling me what to do, how to do it, what
Where
classes
did
I
you
had.
go?
I went to the State University, Oswego, upstate
Mhm,
New
mhm,
York.
mhm,
And I started off with a math major because I was good in math in high school. And
mhm.
then when I started failing third semester calculus, I said, well, maybe it's time to look for another major.
Yeah.
So I was a math major and a chemistry minor.
Mhm.
And then I switched from that to English and French. Talk
Mm.
about out of the, out of the whatever, and
Yeah.
there I am, totally different right brain, left brain.
Yes.
The math,
Yeah.
chemistry with the English and the French and the literature and the writing.
Mhm.
I'm glad I made that switch because that's where I was more comfortable, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
And in fact, I wanted to change my major my senior year in college to French because I had already taken all these upper level French courses, and they wouldn't let me. They said,
Oh.
you have to graduate. Goodbye. We're kicking you out. And that's how that happened.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. And then how did you get into teaching and be a teacher at CI?
Okay, interesting story too. I wanted my relatives, one of whom was a dentist, said you need to be a dentist. You'll make a lot of money and so on. And I said,
Mhm.
I hate dentists. I don't want to be one that people hate.
Mhm.
So, the next best thing when you look at it, work 10 months of the year, You have
Yeah.
2 months off. You have
Mhm.
2 weeks at Christmas. You have 2 weeks at Easter. You got all these holidays.
Mhm.
And so I said, okay, the education is quicker than going to dental school. And
Mhm.
that's how I decided to become a teacher,
Mhm.
because it was supposedly the easier path.
Yeah.
I'm glad I made that switch,
Mhm.
because, and this is going to sound maybe conceited, but a lot of my former students, you don't, when you're a teacher, you don't get immediate feedback, well, at
Mm.
least not positive feedback.
Mhm.
You get the kid who wants to slash your tire, smash your windshield because you gave him an F, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But what I'm finding out now later in life is that I might have done some good. That's kind of how that came about. And I originally taught in CI for 2 years.
Mhm.
And then I said, maybe I need to move up to a different place. So I went back to Smithtown where I graduated. I had
Mhm.
an interview there and they were going to hire me. Um, and then the person said to me, why don't you wait to get tenure where you are? So I
Mhm.
had to stay one day into my 4th year to get tenure.
Mhm.
And then I could go back and interview in Smithtown again and they would hire me.
Mhm.
Well, 2 more years in CI, I
Mhm.
fell in love with the kids. I
Yeah.
fell in love with not necessarily the administration,
Mhm.
but I felt I could do more good in CI than
Mhm.
I could, and this is going to be a prejudice statement, in Lily White, Smithtown.
Yeah.
The only Black family in Smithtown was my chemistry teacher, who is still alive, and I adore this man.
Mhm.
He just had his 94th birthday.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
I know. And he is
Amazing.
as aware and sharp as you'd ever want him to be.
Wow.
And he was one of my motivations
Yeah.
to become a teacher. And so staying there in CI was the way to go. And then 33 years later,
Mhm.
here we are.
Wow. I love it. I love it. And how did the students have you learned any lessons? Like, what are your favorite memories or lessons from students that you've had?
Whoa, that could take 2 hours to answer one question. Um, Okay, I think one of my strongest memories was when I started teaching in 1968.
Mhm.
We had the massive race riots.
Oh,
I don't know if you know about
I
those.
think Schiavo mentioned that in his
Yeah,
podcast.
Schiavo was very much a part of that, and Liz Armstrong and a whole bunch of people. We were all kind of, artsy fartsy literary people, kind of hang together.
Yeah.
And the riots closed the school for 3 days,
Wow.
and there was violence in the streets. There was all kinds of stuff happening, and the board, I guess, and the administration asked the teachers to go out into the community. That's what Schiavo and I and Liz and a couple of other people went out to the community to try to bring some kind of peace, so that
Mm.
at least there could be talking.
Mhm.
And it didn't happen.
Mhm.
And I remember the kids running through the hallways with tire irons and chains,
Wow.
banging on the doors, telling all the Black kids to come out into the hallway. If you don't come out into the hallway, you're not one of us. And I
Wow.
had ninth graders. I had these little 14-year-old kids who were
Wow.
scared out of their mind.
Wow.
And I looked at them. I was a first-year teacher. I was,
Mhm.
22 years old. I was only 8 years older than these kids.
Wow.
And I looked at them and I said, if you got to go, go.
Mhm.
Don't want to go and you don't feel safe,
Yeah.
stay here. And one of my students, and I can't remember her last name, her first name was Renee. She looked at me, bright, bright Black girl. I was in a ninth grade honors class.
Mhm.
And she said to me, Mr. Priest, I'm going to stay. She
Mhm.
said, but if it comes down to it, if it comes down to you or me, Black or white, you're going to lose.
Really?
And I literally, my jaw dropped because there's this little 14-year-old kid
Oh my God.
saying this. So that was my first year of teaching.
Wow.
Yeah. Um, and then I guess another important milestone was that on my birthday, at the end of that school year, a bunch
Mhm.
of kids got together and threw me a birthday party. And they had
Oh.
they had a combo and they had food and they had dancing and everything else. And it was like, wow. I made
Wow.
it through my first year of teaching. And to this day, I
Yeah.
am still friendly with these kids from I can tell you where they sat, in my
Wow.
classroom.
Mhm.
So, other memories, I love and always have loved watching the light bulb go off over
Mm.
someone's head
Mhm.
when
Mhm.
there's a connection.
Yes.
And that's still now. I mentioned the word connection before. I'm 76 and I love connection.
Yes.
So part of that connection in teaching was you talk about somebody, and I love literature. So
Mhm.
through
Mhm.
reading, and then when the kid goes, I got it.
Mhm.
Oh
And then
yeah,
you see that light bulb go off.
yeah, that's that aha moment that you get
Yes. I
as a
love that, the
teacher.
Oprah aha moment.
Yeah, it is, and
I
I'm
love
not a big
that.
fan
Mhm.
of Oprah, but I get that aha moment
Yeah.
thing.
Mhm.
There were things. I mean, there were funny stories. I was trying to do a lesson on using your senses when you're writing, not just your eyes, but
Mm.
using hearing and smell and taste and touch and all the rest of that stuff. And I said, my God, if I just jumped out the window right now, half of you wouldn't even know what I'd done. So to prove my point, I opened up the window. This is the Reed School,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
And I was on the first floor, thank God.
Oh, perfect. And you jumped out.
I jumped out the window
Oh, that I
and,
love it.
and
I
then I
love it.
ran around the back or back entrance. However, the way the school was set up, it was like an L, and my
Mhm.
room was here. So I jump out the window, but this part of the L was the administration wing. And the principal was having a district-wide principals meeting,
Oh my
and
gosh.
they were all facing the window behind the principal, and they see this teacher come flying out of a classroom
Really?
window. Yeah, and I got called to the principal's office, and he says, "Jim, I just want to verify this with you. Did you get thrown out the window, or did you choose
Yeah.
to jump out
Yeah.
of the
Like,
window?"
did you go out? Like, what happened there?
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, things like that started to happen that made me truly enjoy the classroom process.
Mm, mhm.
The kids all thought I was nuts. So that really helped.
Yeah. I mean, well, you got their attention,
I
and
sure did.
right. I mean,
Yeah,
that's a huge feat in itself to keep their attention, to try
yeah.
to get through to them, and give them some life lessons that I'm sure a lot of them impact them to this day, of how
Yeah.
you taught to them.
I think too, what happened was, I was teaching in the traditional way because that's what I'd learned, and that's how the examples I had I was following. But around the beginning of the '90s, our department chairman, Michael Moore, I don't know if you remember Mr. Moore.
I think so. I think so. I think
Okay, yeah,
I was looking through the yearbook, so I feel like I vaguely.
yeah. Mike came up to me, and I think he knew I was getting burned out teaching the same way over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I got a program for you, Jim. I want you to take a look at it. So I went to a couple of conferences, and it was tech prep. And a misnomer because applied communications didn't work, and people were thinking it was like substandard English. But I latched into this program, and for the
Mm.
last 10 years of my teaching, it was my savior.
Oh,
I loved it.
yeah.
It was hands-on learning. It was logical thinking. I never gave a test. They always
Mm.
had to take what they were taught and apply it. There's that applied communications to another situation, because I always felt if you learn it, here, what good is it if you don't carry it out and
And
apply it in another part of
apply
your
it,
life?
take some
Exactly.
actions.
Exactly. And we did a lot of problem solving activities.
Mhm.
And that's what got me through to my retirement.
Mm.
And, I retired, unlike Babe Ruth, who kept going and going and going, and he was like almost a pathetic figure. I said, it's time to go.
Mm.
I was sitting in the faculty room at the high school, and I was the old man, you
Mm.
know. They would
Mm.
say, oh yeah, don't listen to the old man. He's drooling over in the corner. And I
Mm.
said, okay, that was my faculty, my co-faculty workers.
Really?
Yeah. And so I realized it's time to give over to the youth and let
It's
them
hard.
take
It's hard to decide that and like let something go when that is like such an integral big part of your life.
Yeah, and I went a year early. I mean, I think partly because of the finance, you talk about finances and affording and so on,
Yeah.
very much, despite the fact that we can say money is the root of all evil and all that, you still got to buy food and put gas in the car and
Yeah,
pay rent and
you need
so
to,
on and take care of your
fill those
kids.
needs. Mhm.
Absolutely. So I went a year early because the state put an enhancement package in, the district put another bonus in. And I ended up making more money in retirement for the first 3 years of retiring.
Mhm.
And it turns out that going a year early was a smart move because the year after they didn't have those same enhancement
Oh, okay.
packages.
That's great
Yeah,
then. Mhm.
yeah. So the decision it worked out for me.
Yeah. So that was a blessing, right? All these
Yes.
like little blessings that come into our lives.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So I have like random index questions that I like to like
Sure.
go out.
Give me your best shot. Come on.
Yeah, I have like a whole, I'm like, which one?
Oh boy, yeah.
You know, the funny thing is eventually as I'm doing these, I was like, you know what? They always have these like card games of questions and connections, you know? So I'm like, maybe I'll do an Artandhustle podcast, Art of Living game where, you know, you just randomly ask questions,
Yeah.
that connectivity with people.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
But one thing you did say was connection. And that's one of the beautiful things that I love while doing these podcasts, you know, because like as I'm getting older, my memory's shot, you know,
Mhm.
and I have a lot of gaps of memories of my childhood. So one of the podcasts I had done with like my childhood friends was like Ricky Rodriguez, Joshua, and Jordan, and all these
Yeah.
friends from, you know, young, and they would remind me of things that I forgot.
Yeah.
And it's like
Absolutely.
beautiful. And now the thing is that the thing with this is interesting is that when I record them, and then I edit all of these videos myself. So my partner taught me how to edit them. So like it was always hard for me to see myself fully until I started editing the videos.
Yeah.
So I started liking myself more and I start hearing myself more. And then I'll start hearing like what other people say and then the connections of what people give of advice. It starts to sink in more. And it's beautiful because conversation last night on Facebook, but it's not recorded. And then we might forget how beautiful that conversation is.
Exactly.
But now it's recorded and now you can pass it on the link to somebody else and they can hear it and you can rehear it. And it's beautiful to have it like preserved. And that's what I love too, is to, because, you know, as you get older, you forget. And now that we have these on, like I can always listen to these conversations over and over again. Okay, let's see. One of the ones that I have in these is like, what do you think is the purpose of life?
Okay, Yoda.
Those are one of my Oprah
Yeah, this is,
questions.
I could answer that differently in every stage of my life, but
Mm,
I'm not going to go back. I'm going to say what's the purpose of life right now. Growing up in living in the climate that we're living in, the political, social climate, the devastation of the shootings in the schools, the war in Ukraine, what's happening in our democracy right now,
mhm.
makes me think the most important thing in life, and I don't want to use the word connection again, but is the respect for human life that I think we have forgotten.
Mhm.
And seeing each other as human beings despite our differences,
Mhm.
um, caring for people, loving people, being kind to people,
Yeah.
and accepting, this is a big thing and a hard thing for me to have learned, accepting the kindness that people show me
Mm,
with grace and gratitude.
mhm.
I'll give you 2 examples. When I was visiting New York to see my kids in July this year,
Mhm.
I was MacArthur. Are you still on Long Island?
No, I've been Staten Island, but I know MacArthur Airport.
Okay, in MacArthur Airport, they now have changed the transportation hub. It is a separate building apart, considerably distant from where you check in your luggage and then you go to your gate.
Mhm.
So you have to walk with your luggage and everything else over the transportation center to get to rent a car and blah, blah, and the reverse,
Mhm.
drop it off there, and then walk with your luggage back to the terminal.
Mhm.
And I was wearing Skechers and my toe caught the floor and I took a flop on my face over my
Oh
luggage and
no.
everything else.
Mhm.
And this gentleman, I guess, who worked there came running over to help me up. And a young girl, I say young, probably your age, I have no idea, but you're young. She came over to me and she said, "Oh, sir, are you okay?" And she was helping me up. And then I stood up finally and she picked up my luggage and she said to me, "Sir, can I walk you over to the terminal? I'll walk your luggage over with you." And for the first time in my life, Linda, I felt like an old man.
Mm.
And I dwelled on that for like an hour, but then I realized that kindness
Hmm.
to a perfect stranger, she could have left me on the floor.
Yeah.
That kindness, and then to accept her intention of
Yeah.
being kind
Yeah.
was so important to me.
Mhm.
I have another friend. This is another silly example. A friend who had a massive heart attack a year ago, survived it. He is healthier than he was then. I play golf with him a lot,
Mhm.
and we were karting together one round of golf. And about the fourth hole, he said to me, "Oh, Jim," and he got out of the cart, he went to his golf bag and he pulled out a dozen golf balls. And he said to me, he said, I won these in a tournament. I don't use these, but I thought of you.
Mm.
And I remember these are the golf balls you play with. So here." And I said, "Dan, do I owe you?" He said, "No, no." But his words, "I thought of you.
Mm.
I
Mhm.
remembered you."
Yes.
That's part of the purpose of life, to answer
That's
your
the little
question.
things. It's the
To,
little things.
yeah, the little things, and to be thought of, to be
Mhm.
remembered, excuse me, and to do that in turn for other people.
Yes.
That's, to me, what's important. That was a
Yes.
long answer to a short question.
No, I love it. I love it. And that's what I like. So like as I edit these podcasts, I also ask all of my guests to send me photos. So I when I do them, it's kind of like an art form too, because I add your photos to the edits so then people get to know,
Yeah,
a photo of you from like when you were young to now to high school to your life, and it's become like a little bio tribute to you in these podcasts that I do because
yeah,
I just love these stories of people. And
yeah.
for you to open up your world and share with people is a big thing
Thank you.
in
I
general.
appreciate you saying that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Let's see. Like, do you have any biggest regrets?
Yeah, I have a lot of regrets, but they they're more psychological.
Mm,
They're not having good self-esteem,
mm-hmm,
and getting, that's a regret I have, in
mm-hmm,
not being who I am and who I want to be, and not caring what other people think about me.
mm-hmm,
And that's, when you're growing up, when you're a teenager, that social piece of the
mm-hmm,
puzzle is so important. And because I was always trying to be perfect, for family, you
yeah.
know,
Yeah. I can totally understand that.
and a friend of mine who's well versed in me said, you know, I said to her, "Perfection is protection. If you're perfect,
Ooh, I
you
love that.
can't, no one can criticize you."
Yeah.
And then she said to me, "No one's perfect.
I love it.
So
I
you
love it.
will never have that protection. So you need to be who you genuinely are and not
Yeah.
worry about or regret
Yeah.
what people think of you."
I love it. I love it. Let's see. Who should I interview next?
Should you interview now? I don't know who you've interviewed so far.
Uh,
So,
or just anyone that you would recommend.
well, you've done Schiavo,
Then
obviously.
Schiavo, Zaz is on my list. Star is on my list. I reached out to Susan Kirk last night to see if she's interested. Winograd is on my list. So those are all people on my list. I think
Okay, and I'll tell you right there, that
yeah.
list you made,
Hmm.
Zazaretti, my God, amazing. She and I are still friends. She's come here. She stayed here. We've, socialized down here. She loves it. I spent an hour and a half on the phone with Kirk the other night because she'd read the book and
Hmm.
she wanted to talk to me and share our joint experiences.
Hmm. Hmm.
Who else did you mention?
Winograd.
Winograd also, and I did not know about Helene, and the book has brought out some information that she chose to share with me.
Yeah.
Uh, and
Facebook has connected all you guys. So you guys are more prominent and social on Facebook. So I always see everybody's posts. And so
yeah,
that's I'm connected to all of you. And I'm like, oh, I gotta get all of you guys on.
from the little bit that I know of these people since, I mean, I've been retired for 22 years now.
Mhm, mhm.
So you kind of drift apart and you lose contact with their stories and how their lives are going. But Kirk and Zazaretti have histories that I think would be wonderful subjects for this,
Mm,
as Helene Winograd. Larry Nagy is
mm.
another one. Art teacher, did you have Larry? Was he still?
I don't think I had
You
him.
may have
I had
graduated. when he moved up to administration.
Oh, I don't think I had him. Like I had, oh, Linda Baglio, I reached out to her. So
Bagley.
when she has time, she's going to do it. I'm trying to think of anybody else on Facebook, but it's mostly people on Facebook who
Yeah.
are possibly open to having these conversations, because not everyone's ready for them.
Right.
You know,
I spent an hour on the phone with, well, FaceTiming with Larry Nagy the other day too. He'd be another one. And of course he's art. So that kind of filters
yeah.
into
Oh, okay,
your
that's great.
backgrounds as
Yeah,
well.
pass him my info. I would love to.
I will. I
bring on
absolutely
people.
will. Okay.
Mhm. What is something that you love that everyone else doesn't?
Whoa. Okay. Well, there are a lot of things I love. I love to play the piano, but people don't like to listen to me play the piano. I love to play golf, but I don't play very well. I love to do photography. I don't know if you've seen the posts. I mean, that photography is a big thing.
Yeah, I
for
love
me.
you have like beautiful sunsets that I've
Right
like.
in my backyard, Linda. I mean, I
I love
go
it.
out and when we have the
What
storms,
part of Florida are you in?
I'm in Sarasota. It's on the West
Sarasota.
Coast, between
Okay.
Tampa and Fort Myers, I guess, halfway
Okay.
between.
Yeah.
But I walk out after the storms that we have in the afternoon, particularly this time of year, the sunsets are spectacular.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
all I mean, I've taken 3 or 4 courses in photography and editing, iPhone photography and then editing the photos.
Mhm.
So I've learned a lot about composing photos. So I don't know that a lot of people like to do photography. They may admire the finished, well, the same thing.
Yeah.
They may not like or don't see themselves doing what you do, but they
Mhm.
can admire and respect what you do.
Yeah.
What I like that people don't like. Yeah, I'm pretty blah. and ordinary.
What is your favorite food?
You were going to go there because I was going to mention food. You kind of read my mind.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
We're on the
it's
same energy.
off the top of my head, lobster. That's
Mhm.
right there at the top. I'm not a big meat eater.
Yeah.
I eat a lot of fish, salmon, lobster, shrimp. But lobster, if you're going to offer me lobster,
Yeah.
funny story, there was a place in Patchogue called Pat and Jim's Whirl Inn. And this is like decades ago. I was still married.
Mhm.
And they had a special, all the lobster tails you could eat for $8.
Wow.
So my wife and I went there and I had 14 lobster tails that night.
Wow. Mhm.
They were the smaller ones. They weren't big
Yeah.
ones. And
Mhm.
my wife got so embarrassed at my calling the lobster waitress over for another refill.
Yeah.
She said, "Don't give him any more. He's had enough." So I guess lobster is my number one.
What is the one food you don't like?
Oh, well, yeah. I was exempt from these vegetables when I was a kid. Lima beans, cauliflower, and beets.
Mm.
No. No. And I'm adding to that Brussels sprouts now because my daughter's trying to get me to eat. And I go, I don't care how you cook them, Kristen. I'm not eating them. And then you
Yeah.
want to throw in kale. I've tried that too. No.
Oh, yeah, I know that kale is like the new food. Everyone's putting kale in
Oh,
everything.
come on. It's
Kale
not
juices
nasty.
and kale this. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, last question. What is your advice for, well, maybe two, money and also marriage or relationships and love?
Wow, now you're hitting some really big stuff. You got a couple of years for this one. Money. I have enough money to do what I want. You see,
Mhm.
I was very good in terms of the pension.
Mhm.
I live in a nice house. If I want something, I go buy it. So money is not important to me. This is why I get upset with the people who are furious over forgiving the $10,000 college loan debt.
Mhm.
Because there are people who can't afford to put food on their table, and
Yeah.
yet they're struggling to go to college and become educated to raise themselves out of this. So I don't begrudge them that at all. And
Mhm.
I've had arguments with friends. I said, you know what? We're living where we live
Mhm.
because we're able to afford it. Don't begrudge anybody that forgiveness of $10,000. It's
Yeah.
a drop in the bucket. So money
Yeah.
is not huge
Mhm.
for me. Love and relationships. Well, I'm currently not in a relationship.
Mhm.
I've dated several people, women down here, who are either on the rebound or they want someone to be their ATM machine.
Mm,
That's not
mm,
me. I have the money, but don't date me because you want me to pay for all your bills and expenses and so on. I don't mind taking someone out to dinner, going to theater or whatever.
Mhm.
but I'm not paying your bills.
Do they make it like known that they want you to pay
Well,
their?
I think that it's been told to me in subtle, more subtle ways
Mhm.
that, they expect you to pick up the check. They expect you to, well, they'll say things like, oh, my bills are due and I'm having trouble. And I just look, I don't respond
Yeah.
because that's not my job.
Yeah.
And I also find that people who are on the rebound are not, it's hard to say the words, they're not authentic in their
Mm.
desire to be in a relationship.
Yeah.
They're just, or their purpose is just to be with somebody. And I want more than that. I don't want to waste my time
Yeah.
with someone who doesn't have a true desire. I would like companionship now. I'd like someone to go out dancing with, to go to movies with. I do a lot of theater
Mhm.
down here. I've acted in, probably 5 or 6 different shows.
Mhm.
I'm auditioning for a show come February, and it's very
Ooh.
interesting. You'll like this one because you and Jordan talked about it. And I know we're kind of running out of time here,
Mhm.
and I know you're watching it, but it's called Now and Then.
Oh.
And the basic premise of it is, if you could go back and talk to your younger self,
Mm.
what would you tell them?
Oh, I love
And
it. We should end with that one. What advice, right? Right.
and the basic premise is a bartender. He's cleaning up, he's closing up. This old man comes in and he wants a drink, and the guy says, "I'm sorry, I'm closing up. My girlfriend's going to be here." Blah blah blah. The guy said, "Just one drink. I'll sit here. I'll be quiet."
Yeah.
And about a quarter of the way through the play, you realize that the old man
It's
is the
him.
young man grown up.
Yes, it's
And
him,
the,
right?
and
It's
the
the bartender.
girlfriend comes in to go out with the bartender. And then in Act 2, an older woman comes in, and it's the girlfriend grown up.
Oh, I just got
And
chills. I
and,
just got
and the old
chills.
man
I
is
love it.
come back to tell his younger self, don't get married, pursue your desire to become a musician.
Oh,
And she, the girl,
yeah,
wanted to be a teacher,
yeah,
and she ended up in business. And so they
yeah.
both get advice from the older selves.
Love it.
And it's really a fascinating premise.
That is beautiful. So that's a beautiful way to end this. So what advice or would you give your younger self?
Would I go, oh, you don't want to go there? But to give my younger self would
Mhm.
be who you are without shame,
Mm. Mhm.
without regret,
Mhm.
without worrying about what other people are going to think or say about you.
Mhm.
You are beautiful as you are.
Mhm.
And don't ever sacrifice that or change that because of public opinion.
Yeah, no, that's
That's what I
beautiful.
would say.
I
That's what I
love it
would.
because that's the journey that I am on ever since I think I started after my mom had passed away. Like I told Jordan, like
Yeah,
I've been on this journey to be more authentically myself
yeah, yeah.
and to
And I
sit in that
bless you for
space.
that.
Yeah.
I bless you for that, because this was such a joy doing this now with you. But
Mhm.
listening to your flip over, change over thing with Jordan,
Yeah. Yeah.
I learned more about you that I am latching on to personally. And
Mm,
that's you. That's a great gift.
I
Thank you
love
for
it.
that gift.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining me. And I feel like we'll have to do another one of these and catch
I
up,
would love, I really would.
right?
I would love to.
I
And,
love
if you get, the book is available on Amazon in Kindle version or
Okay.
in paperback, you'll get a greater insight to me
Mm,
if you take a look at that. And there are pictures in there, because the subtitle is Faces of Cancer,
mhm,
and I want people to identify with faces.
mm.
So yeah, and if you want me to send you pictures of when I was ugly and fat and old, I mean young, I'll do that too. But just hit me up with
Yeah,
that.
no, I definitely just email me some photos so I can collage it in because I like to show people like their story and like who they were before, now, like a little timeline of them. I think
Yeah,
it's really nice to see the whole breadth of it. And I thank you so much for joining me, and we'll definitely do another one of these soon. So
absolutely.
thank
My
you so
honor.
much.
Thank you. Have a
All
good
right,
one.
you too. Have a great day.
You too.